Hello and welcome to the Best Umpire Show, where you learn to become the best umpire you can be by improving your skills and connecting with other umpires. Here's your host and fellow umpire, Andy Traub.
Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Best Umpire Show. So today we're going to talk about the progression of punishment, which is the idea of when you should and how to handle the progression of when do you eject. What are the other steps you can take instead of just ejecting a coach? Because I think ejections should be rare, not because coaches don't earn them, but because there's a lot of other things you can do to avoid them. And ultimately, I think that games are better when the coaches can stay. And also, I think that having a lot of ejections speaks to things being out of control. It's not good when there's a lot of ejections. That is not a good sign of game management. And I think there's a lot of things you can do to avoid ejections. Let me start this episode with a story about when I had to eject a coach, or I should say he earned an ejection. And this is a great story because it reminds me, and I hope it reminds you, of how sometimes people just pick stupid fights. Like they say, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And I love this quote. I'll start with this, which is that never wrestle with a pig. You get dirty and the pig likes it. I'll say it again. Never wrestle with a pig because you get dirty and the pig likes it. I think some people are just disagreeable. Some people just like to be difficult. Some people like to just raise a ruckus. And on this specific day, I was umpiring at our local fields for two travel teams, 10-year-old teams. And I knew both the coaches personally. I'd coached one of their sons before, and they both had started travel ball teams. So here's what transpired. It was the very beginning of the game, maybe the second inning, but it was not very long into the game. And the home team is pitching, and their pitcher was doing pretty good. But their catchers kept scooting closer and closer to the plate, and I was concerned about his glove getting hit or just him getting hit. He was sitting up so close. And this being a scrimmage, and them being 10-year-olds, I was taking it upon myself to tell the young man to scoot back, and I had already done it once. And his pitcher, I think, had struck out two kids that inning. He was doing pretty good. Yeah, I think one strike on the third batter of the inning. And I stepped around the plate in front of the batter, and I said, hey, you need to step back. And I drew a line to where he should be standing. And the coach said to me, who was sitting outside the dugout, hey, you're throwing off my pitcher. And I didn't know who he was talking to. It didn't make sense to me. And so I ignored him. And then he said, you're throwing off my pitcher. But he said it in a much more annoyed tone. And I looked at him and I said, I'm helping your catcher scoot back so he doesn't get hurt. And he said, whatever, you're throwing off my pitcher's rhythm. You're screwing up the game. And at that point, I said, listen, I'm trying to help your catcher. Let's just calm down and play ball. And then he escalated it by saying something else. And I said, if you say anything else, I'm going to restrict you to the dugout. And he said, I'm going to say whatever I want. And I said, okay, then you're restricted to the dugout. And he said, I'm not going to the dugout. I said, okay, well, then you're ejected. And he said, Andy, I'm not leaving. And I said, okay, then I'll leave. And so I just left. Took the balls out of my bag. My son was actually umpiring with me. And I said, let's go, bud. And we just left. And they played their scrimmage without umpires. And it reminded me of how quickly things can turn bad when people don't follow instructions. As I look back on it, I could have stopped and went over and talked to him because there was a lot of different lessons to learn from that situation. And one, if you're a coach listening to this, just don't pick stupid arguments. I understand there are times to fight for your team, but in the second inning of a scrimmage for 10U at your local field, that's not the right time to pick a fight. That's not a hill we're dying on. And there's a lot of things I would like to have done differently, and probably one of them is just stop and call time and go talk to him, try to calm him down. But ultimately, there is a progression that you can follow. And sometimes this progression can happen in a 2-minute span or in a 2-hour span. But let me just share it. It's like Taco Bell's menu has like 8 ingredients, but it's the same 8 ingredients mixed up to make 200 different things. These ingredients, I think, are the same, but how you mix them up is going to be different for you. I'm going to tell you what the ingredients are, but I'm not going to tell you when and how to use them because they're just different in different situations. But I think it's important to have them in your toolbox. The first one is to ignore. There are times that people will say things and you can just let them go. Like I heard one time a coach say, and this is kind of a common phrase, but I called a strike and a coach didn't like it. And he said, don't take the bat out of his hands. And I ignored it the first time. Minor offenses that don't disrupt the game, you can just ignore them. Like that was outside or whatever. A coach is usually not going to say that, but if a fan is, you can just let that go. Or if a coach asks a catcher, where was that? And the catcher signals, I generally let that go. If they ask it too much, then we're going to have a conversation. But it's fine to just ignore. The first time, you can just ignore things. The second is you can acknowledge behaviors that need correction. And as an example to that, there's different ways to acknowledge. So here's one. You can just turn and look at them. You can keep your mask on, but as you're standing, just turn and just look at them. That's all you have to do. Just turn and look. And I like to make eye contact, and they usually stop talking. Other times, though, when you acknowledge them, probably 50% of the time, actually, they're going to say something. Like, I see you looking at me, or they're going to say, what? Or they're going to repeat what they said. At that point, you can either turn away and go back to the game, or you can lift your mask and just keep looking at them. You're not saying anything to them, you're just acknowledging them. Okay, I hear you. The next is that you could issue a warning. You could say, Coach, I'm issuing you a warning. And next time you're restricted to the dugout. If it's an issue with a fan, and listen, there's different situations with fans. One of them is that you're at a high school game or middle school game, and you're going to have the ability to talk to a coach and say, hey, I need you to handle your fan, or someone on site that needs to talk to the fan or deal with the fans. But a lot of times, most umpiring, I believe, is travel ball situations. So in those situations, if you're going to warn someone, you can go to the coach and say, you need to get them to stop talking or they're going to be ejected. And it's ideal if someone else can deal with a fan, but sometimes you just have to deal with fans. And some people say, I never deal with fans. Okay, well, if a fan is cursing at me or cursing another player or just being disruptive in some other way, I'm dealing with the fan. It's my job to manage the game. And you say, yeah, if it's on your side of the fence, keep it on your side of the fence. No, I'm not allowing an environment where an adult is acting inappropriately. That's usually foul language or threats. So that's when you can add a warning. The next is you could restrict them to the dugout. This is good because it's not an ejection. Like, it's a nice compromise. I don't get to do very many restrictions. And when I do them, they usually end in an ejection as well. Coaches generally go, I'm not going to sit in the penalty box. I'm just going to leave. And they don't say that, but that's how they act. Because you say, Coach, you're restricted to the dugout. And they generally don't like that. I have seen coaches get restricted to the dugout and be fine. But probably 75% of the time, you're going to end up with an ejection after a restriction. And your assigner, your association, this is something you should be really clear on. When you go work a travel ball tournament, you should have a conversation with the umpire in charge on site. What do you want me to do? What's the progression you want me to follow? And don't be afraid of asking quote unquote dumb questions like that, because you need to be on the same page. And also understand, what are the results of an ejection? What's really bad is when you eject someone and there's no penalty, meaning they're out for that game and they're right back for the next game. Most travel ball tournaments that I work, when you are ejected, you are out for the next game as well. And that can be really bad for the coach and for the team. Other league situations I've seen is you're out for the next game, whenever that game might be. So if you have a game next Thursday or whatever, then you're out for that game and you cannot be on the premises. I did have a situation once where I had to eject a coach, and he was the only coach. And two dads came in and stepped up and helped out, and that team ended up winning. The other team didn't make a fuss or anything like that. But what's unfortunate is that team should have had to forfeit. The rule set is that if there's no coaches left, that the team has to forfeit. They can't coach themselves. And he was the only coach, and I think I had made the comment, don't get ejected or something like that at the plate meeting. And he said, I don't plan on it. Well, he got ejected. And so that team should have had to forfeit, but I didn't know the rule. And now I know the rule. And that was unfortunate. I think you should do everything you can to avoid ejections, but I also don't think you should be afraid to eject coaches. There's some people that take pride and say, I've never ejected anyone, then You either have the nicest coaches ever, or you're just taking too much crap. Set clear expectations about what they can argue, what they can't argue. They can't argue balls and strikes. They can't argue safe and out. Those are judgment calls. They can only ask for more information. You can't get any more information on a ball and a strike. But if you think that the first baseman pulled their foot off, the base umpire says out, and the coach would come and say, hey, did you see a pulled foot on that? Okay, I'll ask my partner. That's more information. You can avoid ejections by having conversations with coaches about what they can and cannot argue about, and that will limit the arguments. So remember that your goal is, I think, to keep coaches in the game, but when they lose the right to be in the game, you need to enforce that. You should avoid power struggles, and you need to get really good at when they come in hot, don't try to go hotter. When they yell across the field, try not to yell back across the field. Do the best you can to have conversations that are quiet, calm, and respectful, even when they're not. When there's an ejection that takes place, do the right thing, make the ejection, and then step away from the situation. Your partner should come in at that point and enforce the ejection, but you should not engage. To end this episode, I'm going to play a clip from an Instagram video that I saw. And just to set it up, an umpire is going to get hit by a ball. I believe this is a softball game. And a couple things that I see right away. Number one is the girls are very respectful. Like they automatically take a knee out of respect. Like this guy's hurt, we're going to stop. So the first thing is all these girls take a knee, which I thought was kind of sweet and nice. But then you can see like this guy's had enough. And this guy actually accuses the catcher of intentionally missing the ball, or he just criticizes her play, which her coach does not appreciate at all, does not take kindly to that. And so there's going to be a confrontation, and then it's going to get physical. It's unfortunate, and it gets really loud, and then it frankly gets violent. So we'll watch the video, if you're watching the video online on YouTube or whatever you're watching this replay, and I'll break it down and also narrate it as well as we go. So here we go. All right, guy gets hit in the stomach, not very happy about it. And then I believe he's going to reference to the player. He's basically going to scold the player, which the parents do not take to that. And then he's going to yell at the coach. And he's going to start yelling with the coach. Coach is going to come over. Coach is upset. Coach touches him. Now the coach is yelling. I like that the umpire backs off there. That's good. I like that his partner comes in and says, hey, you need to take off. Now the umpire follows him at this point. He should just walk away. He should be turned and walking away. But he keeps engaging with the coach. That's a mistake. So now the coach and the umpire are talking again. At this point, the partner should have taken them away. The home plate umpire should go clean the plate or just walk to the back and get a drink of water. You can just walk away at this point. This is not good game management. I'm not faulting the coach at this point. I feel like the umpire just kept engaging with him, and that was a mistake. Now they're reeling each other's faces, and so this is where it gets worse. So he's going to eject. He's going to say, you're ejected. He's going to give the ejection sign. And then the umpire is going to make contact with him because the coach is too close to him. And then the coach is going to push the umpire back. Coach is a lot taller than the umpire, so he's going to push him back and over, and he's going to hit his head. And he's right. You know, the umpire did push him. You heard the coach say he shoved me, and he did. Here's the other thing. Just because someone shoves you doesn't mean you have to shove them back. Like, you can be the bigger person here, coach. You know, these are grown people, and I could tell by the way that this umpire was moving, and you can tell just by the way he falls. He's older. I mean, the guy's got to be late 60s at least. And so this very tall, probably late 30s, early 40s coach puts his full weight into him and pushes him down, knocks him over, and the guy hits his head. You know, that could probably be assault. And I don't know what happened. We saw a guy in late 2024 get some jail time for, I think he just punched an umpire, knocked him out cold. That was in a men's league. I think he only got like a week in jail. This was not a good handling of an ejection. I want to know some practical tips and strategies on how you can avoid ejections. What's the progression you use? Are there any phrases you use? What do you never do? What do you always do to help with your game management? I'm looking forward to hearing those. And if you listen to the end of the episode here, we're going to give you an email address that you can send either a voice memo to or an email, and I'll make sure I cover those on a future episode. So thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for being part of the Best Umpire Show community. You can find more helpful content on our other social channels. We appreciate it when you leave reviews and share this show with others. If you've got a question, comment, want to be a guest on the show, or become a sponsor, reach out to Andy at theumpireshow@gmail.com. That's theumpireshow@gmail.com. Until next time, stay focused, stay fair, and always be ready for the next pitch.